movie night. This week, we are watching 1994's straight to VHS release, Watchers 3, a movie that even Kyle, the connoisseur of bad movies, gave a 1-star review on Letterboxd.
I did.
No one needs to actually follow Kyle on Letterboxd because Matt will tell you what
I'll give you the updates.
Yeah.
Listen,
And I only have time to watch stuff for this podcast. There's no, like, it's not surprising or fun for anybody else.
Now, you might be wondering, why did I pick this movie? Great question. So, this movie was on YouTube for free, and I was house sitting for somebody, and I said, I've never seen Watchers 3, but I remember the monster on the front looked pretty dope, and so I watched it. And I was like, you know what? This is 76 minutes long. It's stupid as hell, and it'll probably make a good episode. And also, like, come on, man. Are you really shocked that I love this fucking stupid, googly-eyed Muppet bitch-slapping people around the Amazon?
Awesome, because the cover art, I was convinced. I was like, there's no way the monster looks this way. You know, like, there's and kind of similar to Humongous, where, you know, you have this cover art, and then that monster is a nothing burger of a monster. I was like, there's no way this, even as silly as it looks on the cover, is going to match this monster. And lo and behold, as you can see behind me, Patreon viewers, these eyes are staring right through our soul, and they do so multiple times in this movie. It's not just a one and doneer. It happens. They watch this whole movie.
They were aware that the only reason anybody was watching this movie was for the monster, so they made sure to show it as much as they could in this movie, which is why I will say that I think this movie's bad. I still think it's the most watchable Watchers movie because the monster actually shows up a lot in it.
We need a little Watchers knowledge if anybody knows what any of these movies are about. I've not. Okay, you've read the book.
And
fantastic.
I have watched.
Scott, are
the
you
first
willing and able to?
Now third of the 4 movies in the series.
Insane.
So the funniest thing about the Watchers franchise is that it's literally the same story 4 times.
4 times.
There is no continuity. It's just the same story. Although in this one they try to shoehorn in that the Major recognizes Einstein from, I believe, Watchers 2, but I'm not sure. But it's just the same story.
Is it always a golden retriever?
It's always a golden retriever named Einstein. It's always
a monster named the Outsider.
Also, I think that it was called something else in the first one, but the first one is the one that is least like the book. So this is based on a Dean Koontz novel called Watchers, which I remember being very underwhelmed by when I read it in junior high. And honestly, that could be said for almost every single Dean Koontz book.
How does that break it up amongst the other Dean Koontz books?
There are 2 really good Dean Koontz books. There's Intensity.
Yep.
And then I think it's called Lightning. It's this one where I believe there was time travel and they go back to Nazi Germany, and I remember being like, so I read that in 6th grade. I remember I read that in 6th grade and being like, wow, I cannot believe what I'm reading right now. I was like, it was entertaining in an absolutely bonkers way. Watchers is not that bonkers. It's a little too. So, you know, we've talked about Dean Koontz really jocking Stephen King's nuts in the 80s. I feel like Watchers in particular really tried to do the, Stand By Me comes to mind, well, the body, but also kind of like the kids in It, really tried to do the teenagers fighting an unfightable monster, but also shadow government, which not as much a Stephen King thing, but at the same time, very of its time. I mean, and Dean Koontz
there's a little
really
like fire starter in there.
Yes,
thank you.
Like reverse fire starter. Sort of.
It's funny we're talking about this because I think all of us have referenced this on the show that we live where there's at least one what do they call it, like a little library or whatever where someone's built like a tiny little box with books that it's a take one, leave one.
Yeah.
So I always go and check out and see if there's anything that I want to grab from there. I'll grab it, I'll read it, I'll return it. And one of the books that I'm currently reading, I got from there, which was just called Notes from the Upside Down. And it was like the unauthorized guide to Stranger Things. And all the book is, it's like 200 pages. It's literally each chapter is dedicated to a different influence on the first season of Stranger Things. So there's a chapter about Stephen King, and then it's like, here are the Stephen King books that you should read if you're a fan of Stranger Things, because they're clearly influences on the source material. And last night I read the chapter on Steven Spielberg. So it's kind of an interesting way to do it. But they literally called out it for the way that the characters are written.
Yeah.
Stand By Me for the way the characters are written. And Firestarter for the fact that the telekinetic is created by a genetic lab.
Jesus.
And Watchers is just a Kmart version of this.
Well, so in the original, I know we lost the plot for a second there, but in the original, in the book, so Einstein and the Watcher are linked because, and they do this in all 4 of the movies, from what I can tell from Wikipedia. They're dropped, so they're dropped together because the smart dog is supposed to infiltrate a camp, or like, guerrilla base, and then the Watcher, or the Outsider rather, has some way of following it, and then it goes and it slaughters all the humans. That's the whole point. It's like a biological weapon. So in the book and in, I think, the first 2 movies, the Outsider is kind of like a mutated orangutan.
That's it's more of like it's a hairy
but it's got
honestly
claws and teeth.
For lack of better comparison, it looks like the gremlin from the 50s Twilight Zone episode.
Yes.
Like it's
without
just like
those
a big
googly eyes. They saved the googly eyes for this movie.
They save the googly eyes for this, but it's just like, and I think that's why having watched the first 2 movies and watching this one, the fact that there's 4 of these movies is baffling, because I don't know a single human being who's like a diehard Watcher fan.
No one gives a shit about the Watcher franchise.
No.
But how is Mark Hamill in Watchers Reborn?
Yeah. I mean, listen, 1998 was not a kind time for Mark Hamill's career. But like, I just think that this movie, if nothing else, they got the Outsider looking satisfactory to me.
Of
which,
the
like,
4,
it's,
yes.
Yeah, it's definitely like, it's so stupid. It is. I literally wrote that this thing is a Muppet. Like, it's a full body suit sometimes, but there are other times where it's a close up of its face, and that is just a fucking Oscar the Grouch Muppet face that they.
Can we do a ranking of Roger Corman monsters for Patreon? Like,
dude, I'm not against that.
Monsters?
Why don't we do that
you
instead of what I have planned?
We'll do it.
Yeah. No, I need time.
We do need.
That'll be in
that
2024.
that,
But he's writing it down.
Okay, good.
I just think that
monsters.
so this is going to be the reverse of a compliment sandwich, because really the only compliment, the only white stuff in the middle of this Oreo is that the monster.
I thought that was
great.
Oh no, you're right. That's a shit sandwich.
That's a shit sandwich. This is one of the slowest moving 76-minute movies I've ever watched.
Unreal.
I checked the time like 8 times. This movie barely is an hour and 50 minutes.
I dozed twice.
I tried to watch this movie at 2x on YouTube, and it was so frustrating because I couldn't listen to the people speak and catch the ridiculous shit they said on 2x. And so I had to watch it 1x. But I was like, this is excruciatingly slow.
But then, like, here's the thing. The movie kind of is slow and stupid. And then there's just these random moments that I love. The first kill from the Outsider, where it just throws a dude on the ground and just swipes open his rib cage instantaneously.
His rib cage looks like, remember the OG He-Man toys where they would have, he looks like that. There are 3 slices and his chest is all smashed up. I mean, it's obviously got gore, and the He-Man toys didn't, but I actually have a note.
The dog writing danger with a stick in its mouth is like one of the most incredible things
smart dog.
in horror movie night history.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of dog, I don't know. There's a lot of kinship with Humongous, and so I still went dogs and boats. Again, I know there was less boats in this movie than there was in Humongous, but there was more dog than there was in Humongous. So that spans that.
I screwed up. I did not have a beer for this. I didn't have a drink for this, and I was like, "What can I do? What can I do?" Because I wasn't going to go to the store today for it. And I was like thinking about all the beers that I could do. Like there's all these dog named beers. Like there's Old Leg Humper. There's that's an Akron brewery. I think that's the Ohio Brewing Company. Thirsty Dog. Megan just yelled from the other room. That's Thirsty Dog. Which I mean, it could literally.
We love a cameo.
I love an off-mic Megan cameo in an episode of our movie night so much.
We haven't had one of those in too long. So anything from Thirsty Dog would have been fine. There's like Dogfish Head that I could have done because it
oh my god,
it was a dog, and then
like this, it looks like a fish head.
The outsider kind of looks like a fish head.
Yeah,
but then,
damn, that would have been good.
These are all things I could have done, but instead,
and we could have done the 90-minute because it's less than 90 minutes. Oh, but what'd you do?
What I did actually was I found an Original Sin cider in my beer fridge, and that works great because Original Sin in the Bible led to knowledge, and so Einstein.
Yeah.
Is a smart dog.
Well done.
He's a good boy.
That's good. He's a good
I'll accept
boy.
that. I mean, this is
rules.
probably the true wizard behind the curtain on this. Is I was house sitting for somebody. I'm watching this on YouTube. I'm like probably editing a podcast while it's on. You know what I mean?
I
like,
can't imagine you giving this your 100%.
Yeah. But I remember specifically looking up, watching that dog write the word danger in the sand with a stick in its mouth, followed immediately by a fake rubber head decapitation, and I said we could do this for the show.
Yeah.
Like that was basically the moment where I was like, here we go.
You know what? The only thing that could have made that better is if there was a spine still attached.
Yeah, but you did get the mutilated corpse just dangling from a tree
yes.
immediately after, which is nice.
You have a very dramatic assisted suicide scene, like
that is the crown jewel of this movie.
It's
my
so
friends.
over the top. You owe me, you son of a bitch.
I wrote down a lot of lines from that. I think like half of my notes are that, and he says something along he says, "I don't owe you nothing," and then the guy goes, "Oh no, I'm sorry. It's actually the major. He's holding his buddy Nat, and he goes, "I don't owe you nothing. I love you. You're my brother, Nat." And then he's like, "You son of a bitch!" And then he finally shoots him in the head. Fantastic.
But the way that it's shot is so dramatically artful, where he's laying there bleeding, the gun's moving towards his head, and then we cut to the wide shot of the water. And just the gunshot, and the major just like, why, God, why?
I don't understand the severity of this. Like, there is no we got to that part. But before this, we have a dog writing danger with a stick, and it's just like, and even before that, we have the military trying to convince Wings Hauser. Or not giving him an option to come out of prison and do this job. Like he's like it's like a Snake Plissken scenario.
It should be more of a Suicide Squad kind of thing.
Yeah,
right.
It
and
really
it's like,
should.
And dude, honestly, people like ex-military or military in the jungle is probably my least favorite fucking horror subgenre.
Oh,
it is so boring to me.
Because you know that
really
soundstage, or if they're actually in the jungle.
No, they shot this on location in Peru, which is crazy.
Yeah, so expensive.
You know how? But even not in. Is this 88?
Probably
this
not.
is 88, right?
No, probably not 94.
Or 90.
This is 94.
Probably
yeah.
not. Probably not expensive at 94. Roger Corman could afford it.
Yeah, Roger Corman literally had a villa down there, and he was like, "Let's just go to my January home."
Yeah, you think Charlie Band in Transylvania with the castle is dope? Wait till you see Roger Corman with the cabana in Peru.
I watched Tropic Thunder. I know exactly.
It's a weird version of Clue. I know.
Kyle, you pointed out that like the movie is so inconsistent with so much of its logic. Because you're right, like
crazy.
Like dog writing with a stick is too goofy to be in a movie where there's an assisted suicide a couple minutes later. Like,
I would never have the balls to write either of those things in a script. And the fact that they both existed.
But
I think that's a Kyle problem,
amazing.
all right?
Yeah, but you also have this kid. You have this kid who has 0 lines in this movie.
He doesn't
with the
speak
dog.
English, Matt.
That's fine. But like
Neither does the dog.
we've discussed how the first kill in this movie with a single swipe from the claw rips this man's chest so deep that his rib cage is shown. But then in the last minute of this movie, he's just slapping this kid around. He's punching Wings Hauser like it ain't no goddamn
Also,
thing.
you have both said Wings Hauser like that's a name that exists in real life. It doesn't. So listen to this shit. The first 3 names that come up in the title cards: Wings Hauser, Gregory Scott Cummins, and then Daryl Roach. Those all sound made up.
Those are made up names.
Yeah. Well, Wings Hauser is this is
Unfortunately,
very
Cummins
interesting.
probably isn't.
Wings Hauser is replacing Mark Springer.
Right. He's supposed to be the same character.
He's supposed to be the same character. But I mean, listen, as someone who just watched Vice Squad for the first time fairly recently, Wings Hauser matters now because of just that movie. What a ridiculous film.
The best part about those two guys, I'm sure Matt already saw this, and I think it was Wikipedia. If not, that was IMDb.
Yeah.
But it was something where the guy who played the Major in part 2, Mark Singer, was in Beastmaster, right?
Yep.
Or Beastmaster 2.
He was in Beastmaster 2.
Beastmaster 2. And then Wings Hauser was also in Beastmaster 2 as his brother?
As his brother.
And so they're playing the same character, but also playing brothers in Beastmaster 2 a couple years earlier, which is just...
I'm looking at Beastmaster 2, by the way. Also in that movie, Robert Zadar. Horror movie night favorite.
Yeah.
Royalty. I feel like Beastmaster and Beastmaster 2 are like... Those were things that kind of came up in my mind. Well, Beastmaster 1 in particular, because of those bat monsters that liquefy people.
Look, if we've done Jason and the Argonauts and Beneath the Planet of the Apes, you have a clear path to do Beastmaster 1 or 2.
I think that I put this evil on us because I was like, hey, Beastmaster and 13th Warrior, those movies are kind of like horror movie night adjacent. And you were like, hell yeah, let's do it. And I never picked them, but you were like, fuck it, I'm going to do Jason and the Argonauts. I'm going to do Planet of the or Beneath the Planet of the Apes. These movies that have very little horror.
Yeah.
Our time's coming for those movies.
Well, listen, the last thing I'll say about Wings Hauser is that he followed up Watchers 3 with probably the best movie in his entire resume the following year, because in 1995 he was in Tales from the Hood as the racist cop that
Oh
they
my
kill.
God.
Right before that, he was in Champagne and Bullets, for those who I've talked about that movie before. Highly recommend. Probably one of the best sort of like, and I talked about Neil Breen before, but as far as like writer, actor, director, producer, like multi-hyphenate movies, Champagne and Bullets is a big one. If you can ever track that down.
I mean,
I don't remember what
Vinegar Syndrome, right?
It was a VSA release.
Come on!
I think it's sold out. But if you can track it down, high recommend.
Probably on Night Flight, then, right?
This movie, I guess the dog and the outsider are the Watchers, but like it seems like there should be more of them.
I think that
for a pluralized
the Watchers are actually the shadow government, but it's been a very, very long time since I read the books.
That would make sense. Like they're sort of like a New World Order.
Well, it's kind of like Black Ops, or is that what it's called? I don't know. You know what I'm talking about? Like things that work outside the
your
jurisdiction.
military jargon matches the military jargon in this movie. It doesn't matter.
Some of that was hilarious.
Sense.
Hello everyone, we're Superhero Stuff You Should Know, and if you think you know about superheroes and comic books, think again.
We got romance, we got action,
Romance.
we got comedy, we got everything you need, man. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know for all your superhero needs.
I don't know about this romance. What part are you talking about?
We've got all kinds of sketches, and then deep dives on top of that. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
All right, so come on down to... Wait, why did I say come on down? To Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
Yeah, like here's the thing, listeners. Like, this isn't really a recommend, but it's like hey, hey, if you've got something to do and you just want something on in the background, you could do worse than throwing Watchers 3 on and like
This is
occasionally looking up
definitely
at a
a
rubber
first-
suit monster.
Yeah, this is if you're doing a weird ass movie night in a Matt Kelly style, this is the first movie of the night.
Yes.
Yeah.
As
Yes.
people are filtering
Yeah.
in, just a little bit of what the fuck in the background, that kind of thing.
Yeah. 100%.
I think that weird ass movie night is a great barometer for where to place some of these things that we.
I think
watch
that
on
needs to
horror
be
movie
kind of
night.
our
It's-
new.
Yeah, that's the ranking. Is where would Matt put this on a weird ass movie
you've
night?
explained the
Yeah.
reasoning enough times that I think that our listeners will understand. Oh, this is a first. This is a first movie or a second movie or a third
Right,
movie.
yes, exactly.
It's a great tier system.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brings
a
I'm
tear
glad
to
that
my
it's
eyes.
finally- I mean, 21 minutes is more than enough conversation on this
I don't think
movie,
that
I
Roger
think.
Corman put 21 minutes of thought into this movie. So Matt, we got to double feature this movie. What are you going with?
I'm actually going to double feature this with a movie that I cannot believe that we have not done on Horror Movie Night. The Guyver 2 Dark Hero.
Have you not looked at my Trello board, bro?
I know,
like
it's
top
been in
of the
there
list.
forever. It's never made the move.
Yeah, it's a little too kaiju shrink ray for me to pick.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for you to pick it. You pick the first Guyver, just pick the second one.
Well, technically, the Patreon voted for, or the Survey Monkey voted on that one. But
Whatever, Matt.
yeah, I mean, we've done the Guyver. I think in the first year of Horror Movie Night,
It's been
and
a
since
long
then
time.
we've been like, we got to do part 2 because part 2 is so much better, like
Yeah,
a better
Guyver Dark
movie.
Hero is really it takes all the fun from the first one and amps it up, and it kind of siphons off any of the seriousness. It is incredibly goofy. It just feels like you're watching live action One Punch Man, more or less.
Yeah,
it's
but
the same
I
thing.
mean, it's in the woods. They go into a cave. There's rubber suit monsters.
the rubber
like,
suit
seems
monster
like a
in
perfect,
the water is the best scene. In that
great.
movie.
Oh, it's so good. All right, but that's mine.
Kyle.
Scott. It's not fun, but I went The Hills Have Eyes too. I think a smart dog with a flashback is very, very appropriate.
Literally, the only reason that we would ever talk about Hills Have Eyes Part 2 is to discuss the fact that a dog has a flashback in the movie.
and I
It's-
zoned in on it.
I love how you're like,
This is
15 minutes ago, you're like, you know what my least favorite subgenre of horror is? And then you're like, let me find an even more obscure subgenre of horror and pick it as my double feature. Well,
I did have another one.
go
but I'm
ahead.
gonna let
I want you to
Scott
do,
that.
because I feel like we're really ignoring one, but I want you to get your jollies out first.
Oh well, the one that Airbud.
hell
it's
yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Yes, that was obviously the one we were
Yes,
all
yeah,
ignoring.
that really
Not the
would
one that I think
salvage the
Scott is thinking of that came out in, say, 1987.
Yeah. This movie is just Predator. But that's not the movie that I would pick because I don't particularly like Predator, but I do like House. Ding Dong, You're Dead. That House, not House Sue.
Not Wings Hauser. Is that why you picked it? That's not why you picked it.
Oh, it is now.
Before we dive into our final segment, of course, we've got to take a little detour into the what's going on side of this. If you're listening to this episode the day it came out, go to bed right away because tomorrow morning is the 24-hour Geekscape holiday live stream, and you're going to need all the rest you can to check out all of the cool things.
Because they're
going to
be watchers.
Hopefully we have more than 3 watchers
Beautiful.
while we're doing it. But also, while we're here talking about this stuff, hit up our Patreon, patreon.com/HMN podcast. Find us on all of our socials, HMN podcast, on basically everything. And it's Christmas time. You know where you can get some great Christmas gifts? On our store. Go to the hmnpodcast.com website and check us out. We've got shirts, pins, soaps, and other things. So yeah, go check out our store. And do you guys have anything you need to promote for early December?
I mean, Kyle did make an awesome short called The Woodsman.
Ooh, yeah, this is a
I
great
forgot
time to
about
watch The
that.
Woodsman.
Tis the season for a little bit of holiday horror, and The Woodsman is a great one to watch. Thank you, Scott.
Where is that streaming?
It's streaming. You can find it on Dark Matters TV on YouTube. Let me get the actual handle, but Dark Matters is a UK based aggregator basically of short horror. So there's a lot of great stuff on there, including The Woodsman, which is a holiday horror about a tree salesman who is having a rough go on Christmas Eve. If you go to YouTube at Dark Matter Films, matter is singular, films is pluralized. They have a lot of great content up there. And then you can also check out, we did a little Q&A after our premiere back in July. So if you dig the movie and want to hear more about it, you can watch that Q&A. But yeah, I really love it. I love that I have a holiday horror under my belt. It's to separate art from the artist for a second. It is fun to be I contributed to that subgenre in some way that I really like and that we talk about a lot, and I'm able to connect with people on, and it's cool to have a little holiday horror out there. So thank you, Scott, for the reminder that exists in the world, and I hope that you listeners go check it out. It's called The Woodsman.
And The Watchers.
All right.
Because if you're on Patreon,
I
you
hope
can
all
watch
y'all
us.
watchers watch it. Yeah, and if you're a patron, you can watch our silly in these googly eyes behind me. I keep just peeking over, and it makes me smile.
All right, Matt. Last thing to ask you today is, what do you want to promote besides Christmas 365?
I mean, obviously, yeah, go check out Christmas 365. We got some great content. I'm going to do a very quick soft push on a movie that's on Shudder. I made reference to Tales from the Hood, and I feel like this movie actually kind of fits into a similar vein. Came out this year, got a lot of positive buzz, so I finally decided to watch it, and I liked it a lot. I don't know if it's going to be in my top 10 films of the year, but it's still worth watching, and that's The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a retelling of Frankenstein, but in a very smart 2023 way, but also ties into a lot of hot political topics like police brutality and racism and stuff like that. So it's really smart. It's a breezy 89 minutes or something like that. So it's not too long. It's really well done. Just because it's not in my top 10, there's been a lot of good movies this year. It's certainly not a movie specifically for me, is what I'll say. But I also don't know. When I do my top 10s for the whole year, horror doesn't make a lot of appearances on there.
That's
There's
true.
maybe one or two horror movies that really crack it. But yeah, it's very good. Highly recommend it. It's on Shudder. So if you have Shudder, go check it out.
Yeah, and actually, let me piggyback off of that real quick. So I said that it's on my list. I watched Rebirth on Shudder instead of The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster, which is a very similar. Well, I mean, it owes as much to Frankenstein as it does to Dead Ringers in a certain sense, and it is. I wouldn't call it a horror movie, actually. It's interesting because there's. And I know that I've already complained about the Shudder comment sections or review sections are kind of falling to shit. Maybe they've always been terrible. But there has been some division in the reviews saying, this is so much better than The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster, blah, blah, blah. I think that Kyle, specifically, you would really enjoy Rebirth from a cinematography perspective. It's very well shot. I think that it's very well acted. I just wished that there would have been a bit more to it. I mean, it was long. I mean, I don't know if it was 2 hours, but it was, it was a solid runtime. But yeah, it's a very good movie. Might not have been what I was in the mood for when I laid down to watch it. In the opposite sense, for you, Matt, I watched Across the Spider-Verse because it finally hit Netflix, which is a weird place for it because I'm surprised Disney didn't get it. I know Sony, Disney, the whole thing, but I enjoyed Across the Spider-Verse. I think it's visually very cool. It does make my head spin because there is so much spider lore that I know that every single Spider-Man that was in there was a reference, and so there's a lot of fan service, and I was like, this isn't for me, I haven't read Spider-Man since the Clone Saga or whatever it was called back in 1994.
Speaking of the Clone Saga, though,
Ben Reilly.
Andy Samberg as Ben Reilly.
Fantastic. Actually, I think that he might have been the highlight of the movie for me.
And I think that he's going. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, they did Ben Reilly dirty, making him just like this whiny character."
I mean, like that's the point. Like that's the fun of that.
But I also think that he's going to come. I think that he's going to be a huge part
of the third
the
part.
final. Yeah, like I think the final part. I just think that those. I've said it before. I do think that unless they really, really botch the landing, that the Spider-Verse trilogy has a real chance of being one of the tightest trilogies, because you can tell that like it is thought out.
Yes, yeah. The only thing I didn't like about it, and this is a small issue, I just don't like cliffhanger endings for movies because it's so presumptive that I will be interested when the next installation comes out.
My concern is, will I still be alive? Well, and that also backfired in a big bad way, because they were like, hey, we're going to leave it on this cliffhanger ending because we're going to have the next one come out next year. And then the whole strike happened, and it like set everything back in a huge way for them.
Yeah, I read that the only MCU movie, and I understand that Spider-Verse kind of toes the line there, but the only 2024 movie coming out from Marvel Studios is Deadpool 3. It's the only, like, everything else has gotten pushed back, which is just wild to me, because they usually were doing like 4 a year for a couple years, which is
that could also be a good thing.
It's a good thing
ultimately.
To pump the brakes. I agree, but yes, so
100%. All right, Kyle,
take us home, buddy.
Send us home.
Oh my God! I'm gonna say a thing that by the time this comes out, everybody's already watched the whole show. Fall of the House of Usher. I
haven't
the
yet.
First episode. Oh, that's good. That's good. It makes me feel good.
Speaking of Mark Hamill.
Yeah, I was just gonna. I wrote that down. I was so pleasantly surprised when he popped up. The first episode. Obviously, it. Carly
it's
and I
just putting up the pieces. It
is, but it makes me excited because I think that while I'm not like super versed in Poe, I think, and that's the good thing. I think that you don't necessarily need to be super well versed in Poe. I think that the show is setting you up to know a couple of things already, because there's enough distance between Poe's work and now that I found myself not even realizing that I was like, oh yes, that's right, that is a Poe story, like Count of Monte Cristo, or like the Black Cat stuff, or like there's a lot of references that you don't realize are Poe already happening. So I loved that. I think Flanagan was and now is actively doing it, being able to create a universe sort of in his own voice, right? Like to Shirley Jackson was fertile soil, but like Poe is beyond, right? So I think that the setup really great. Loved this Usher family, like just kind of getting dropped into like, oh my God, everyone's dead. How did this happen? A little confession. Like, it feels very accessible, and I'm intrigued. I think while I like Flanagan's stuff a lot, I think other people had found it a little heady at times, or a little like sort of slow moving, or too
Who are you talking about there, Kyle?
Yeah. Particularly, I'll out them. My wife and my friend Jeanette certainly don't love Flanagan's stuff. And then I think it was just there's a general consensus, especially because also like his platform has been Netflix, so there's a particular audience that goes along with like who finds stuff on Netflix, right? Like, so while Bly Manor or even Midnight Mass certainly were scary and atmospheric, I think that so far Fall of the House of Usher is like getting the setup. We're going to get the scares. Like, there's some interesting stuff. It makes me want to watch more. It feels a little like anthological. That's not a word.
It is now.
But it's an anthology series.
Right. And
under the guise of
that,
it's a serialized anthology series is what it ultimately is.
Right. And you have connections, but you probably don't necessarily need all, like, it's great to have all that backstory, but like in a sense you don't need to.
Let me tell
I don't know. I'm excited to go further.
Here's evidence of how much you are on the nose with that. Geekscape's binging podcast, Bingetown TV, the one host, his Netflix fucked up and started him on episode 4, and he didn't realize he was starting the show in the middle of it because they are so like self-contained episodes for a while.
Great.
It's cool. I like that.
Like it's kind of cool how that he was like, I was confused by some of the characters showing up. It didn't ruin the enjoyment of the episode.
Yeah.
Like,
that's great. I mean, Flanagan
I-
has a lot under his belt now that I think that there's a way to just be like, when you get the right team and you get the right people and you have the right source material, that you're just like, boom. And I think, like, I don't know if anybody could do that with Lovecraft. I don't know if I want to watch anybody do that with Lovecraft, honestly. But
He'd be the one to
Poe's
do
stuff
it.
is... He would be the one to
I was going to say, I've had this thought sitting in my brain, and I'm going to verbalize it, and I think people are going to think I'm absolutely fucking insane, but hear me out. I think that Ty West and Mike Flanagan are kind of the closest modern-day equivalents that we have to, like, a John Carpenter, in the sense of they're just making what the fuck they want.
Sure.
And if the audience is on board for it, cool. And it's like, there are going to be people who... trying to decide what their favorite Ty West or Flanagan project is going to be an absolute impossibility because they think that they're all home runs. And there's going to be equal amount of people who are just like, no, it's very obviously this one thing.
Right.
And but it's like, you gotta, I feel like the more that you study film, the more that you like learn to appreciate film, you can look at a director who maybe has more misses than hits even in their career and still admire them for the like go get 'em attitude and like fuck what the audience wants style that they might have. Like, it's funny, on the One Hit Thunder Patreon, Chris has been doing like little mini movie reviews, and he watched The Graduate and he didn't like it at all. He was like, this was like, for something that's considered a classic, I wasn't into it. But he's like, but there was such a style to it that I've decided to watch every Mike Nichols movie. And he's like, and he's just like watching them. He's like, I don't like all of them, but like every single one of them, there's at least something where I'm like, man, that was a really interestingly shot movie, if nothing else. And I think that at the end of the day, because I know Scott is like, probably of the three of us, the person who is the least into Flanagan and Ty West, but even he can't deny, like, the motherfuckers know how to frame a shot.
Right.
Like,
and that's, okay,
like,
so I've been keeping quiet. I really like Ty West. I really do. I hate the Innkeepers. But I like Ty West's stuff. I think that house... Oh, it's fucking terrible.
That'll be another conversation. Okay.
Oh, you don't know?
I don't
Are you
know.
being sarcastic?
I didn't really... I don't
okay.
think I knew that.
Okay.
I don't think I knew that.
It's
if
pretty,
I did,
it's
then
pretty
I
well known.
tuned it out because I like you too much.
In the olden days, I used to talk shit about that movie. But it's because House of the Devil blew me away so bad that when Innkeepers came out, I was very disappointed. Now, with X and Pearl... so good, and
Pearl's
and I don't love X, but I liked watching it. I understood the point, but Pearl just is so my thing, you know. And so like I really have I do have a lot of love for Ty West, and I do have a lot of love for Flanagan too, because I think that I've only watched the Midnight Society or the Midnight Club. What's it called?
There was Midnight Mass and Midnight Club.
Yeah, I watched those two. I have not watched Bly Manor,
Hill House or
and
Bly,
I have not watched Hill House, and I have yet to. I only got about 10 minutes into House of Usher, and I was like, I need to give this my full attention. So that's on my to-do list.
But even
my
his movies,
criticism,
like Hush is really good. I think that he's the only person. I think he's the only person who could have made Dr. Sleep work.
Oh,
like,
but
I
I
genuinely
always
think
forget that he
yeah.
did Dr. Sleep, and I loved Dr. Sleep. I think that Dr. Sleep is superior to The Shining, and I know that's probably blasphemy to so many horror fans. But I mean, like, I absolutely love his aesthetic, and I love the way that he writes characters. Yeah. My only criticism of him is his pacing. That's because he writes for TV a lot, and I don't think that Dr. Sleep was paced poorly. I think that source material, he chewed it up and he spat it out in a very, very good way.
For it's a 2.5 hour movie that does not feel like 2.5 hours. It has
a lot
movie,
that it has to cover.
Which is ironic as we're talking about a 76-minute long movie that felt like a 2.5 hour
That was
movie.
like, oh my god,
pacing, baby. Yeah. So no, let it be known, if you've listened all the way to the end of this episode, that I do like Ty West and I do like Mike Flanagan.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think that you hate them. I just think that Kyle and I are definitely way more on both of those directors' nuts. For lack of a better-
I am. I love their nuts. I do.
No nut November for
Yeah,
you.
this
Yeah,
is for
it's really
yeah.
hard for me to not be on their nuts during November. I guess this comes out in December.
This is
Nobody
December,
will
so you can
know.
be all up on there now
Get
all you
me,
want.
get me in there. Get me in there.
Santa come down my
so-
chimney.
Guys, we will be back next week with another absolutely bombastic wild pick, and then it's Christmas time for horror movie night. So stay tuned. It's about to get holly and jolly up in this bitch.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.